Seoul is considering creating a domestic fund to compensate Korean victims of Japan's wartime forced labor. The victims protested that such a move only exempts Tokyo from its past wrongdoing. 60 years of diplomatic ties between South Korea and Canada. The leaders of Korea and Canada say they're looking forward to upgrading their comprehensive strategic partnership. U.S. inflation falls to its lowest in more than a year. Drops in energy and food prices signs perhaps that aggressive rate hikes are taming inflation. Good morning. Seoul has formalized a plan to come up with a domestic fund to compensate Korean victims of Japan's wartime forced labor. But the victims are calling the move unacceptable. Our foreign affairs correspondent Pyongyang starts us off.
At a public hearing at the National Assembly on Thursday, an official from South Korea's foreign ministry revealed the government's plan to compensate the victims of Japan's wartime forced labor, the Republic Foundation, rather than from the Japanese firms responsible. The public foundation will be funded by donations from domestic companies. The Director General for Asia and Pacific Affairs, Min-jung, said the government came up with the solution as its priority is to arrange the payments as soon as possible, as many victims have already passed away or are in their 90s.
Through detailed review, we found that the key to resolving this issue is to arrange the payments first, even if that means getting the funds from a third party. We will meet the victims and their families to ask for consent.
But victims supporting civic groups and opposition party lawmakers protested the plan. Some boycotted the event, saying this issue cannot be resolved without a sincere apology and participation from the accused Japanese firms, adding this way of compensation is completely ignoring the victims' human rights. Thursday's public hearing comes after the Supreme Court made landmark rulings in 2018, ordering two Japanese companies, Mitsubishi Heavy Industries and Nippon Steel, to compensate the Korean victims of forced labor during the Japanese colonial rule. Pyongyang, Arirang News.
U.S. President Joe Biden has reaffirmed South Korea and the U.S. ironclad ties while marking the 120-year anniversary of Korean-American Day. According to a White House statement on Thursday, Biden took a look back to the day 102 Koreans arrived in Hawaii 120 years ago and paid respect for all that the Korean community has contributed to his country. He also stressed that the Seoul-Washington alliance has become stronger and more lively than ever following his state visit to South Korea last May. He then voiced his hope for moving forward with South Korea using the Korean phrase 같이 갑시다, meaning let's go together. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has urged Pyongyang to return to dialogue amid increasing pessimism over the possibility. Speaking at a Security Council meeting on Thursday, the UN chief said the onus is on North Korea to comply with its international obligations and return to the negotiation table. Guterres added that the unlawful nuclear weapons program pursued by the regime is a clear and present danger, driving risks and geopolitical tensions to new heights. On the same day, White House Indo-Pacific Coordinator Kurt Campbell said that the North is on a provocative path and appears to be disinterested in diplomacy not only with the U.S., but also with South Korea and Japan. This year marks South Korea and Canada's 60th anniversary of establishment of diplomatic relations. The anniversary coincides with a recent upgrade to the bilateral relationship between the nations, as well as the launching of respective Indo-Pacific strategies. Our Min-jung reports.
2023 is set to be a very exciting and promising year for South Korea and Canada relations. This year marks the 60th anniversary of diplomatic ties between the two countries.
60 years is a significant milestone, and we have much to be proud of. In reality, our relationship is even older.
Over the past few decades, South Korea and Canada have formed bonds as like-minded allies through the promotion of peace and security on the Korean peninsula. Canada stood side by side with South Korea during the Korean War. The country dispatched more than 26,000 soldiers and endured sizable casualties.
So South Korea is very grateful for that act of bravery and friendship. That, I think, is the reason why both countries upgraded the bilateral relations to a comprehensive and strategic partnership in last year.
In September 2022, President Yoon Suk-yeol and Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau upgraded the bilateral relationship to a comprehensive strategic partnership. It focused on advancing 5 shared priorities in the areas of values, security, prosperity, sustainability, and beyond.
These are shared challenges that can only be addressed when countries work together. As like-minded countries, Korea and Canada are optimal partners in tackling these common challenges.
The two countries have also developed stable trade relations for over half a century. Today, South Korea is Canada's 7th largest trading partner. Trade between the two countries was boosted by the Korea-Canada Free Trade Agreement, which came into force in 2015. Last year, both countries respectively unveiled Indo-Pacific strategies. Both strategies provide a roadmap for stepping up proactive engagement beyond their own countries. They also provide blueprints for strengthening partnerships to uphold rule-based order in the Indo-Pacific. On Thursday, South Korea's President Yoon Suk-yeol exchanged congratulatory messages with Canada's Governor-General, Mary Simon, and Yoon expressed confidence in further developing the country's comprehensive strategic partnership. Simon stressed that 2023 will be very important for South Korea and Canada for achieving common goals. The messages were delivered on their behalf at the anniversary reception hosted by the Embassy of Canada to South Korea, attended by South Korea's Foreign Minister Park Jin. Like the tagline for the 60th anniversary, Stronger Together, the event showcased South Korea and Canada's strong commitment to moving forward together into the future. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
As we have just seen, South Korea and Canada mark the 60th anniversary of their diplomatic ties today. For more on their friendship and the next 60 years to come, we're now joined by Ambassador Im Eung-sun. He's the Korean ambassador to Canada. Welcome to the program, Ambassador.
Good morning. Thank you for having me today.
Of course. So as our reporter Choi Min-jung has just briefly mentioned, South Korea and Canada are like-minded states. In what way, in terms of values and on democracy, as well as issues on the Korean Peninsula? How can we continue to move forward together?
There are many countries that share common values like democracy and market economy, but Canada is rather special. We have very close cooperation in every dimension. We share not only universal values, but also similar standings in the global stage. We are both middle power countries. We have the 9th and 10th world's largest economies respectively. We are open trading nations, and we are in close proximity with the great powers. We are also strongly committed to the spirit of the UN and the WTO, and furthermore, we are members of like-minded groups called UFC within UN and the Ottawa group within WTO. This demonstrates how closely our values are aligned to each other. Canada's commitments to peace and prosperity have also driven its long engagements with the Korean Peninsula. Canada sent the 3rd largest troops during the Korean War and has dispatched a group of soldiers to the UN command ever since. In recent years, Canada deploys military ships and aircraft to counter North Korea's maritime sanction evasion activities. Canada renewed its commitments to peace on the Korean Peninsula in its Indo-Pacific strategy, and I have no doubt that Canada will remain our key partner for decades to come.
Right. I can tell the list of similarities on values and including democracy can go on and on and on. Now, Canada was the 2nd country after the U.S. to welcome South Korea's Indo-Pacific strategy that was unveiled last month. What are some of Seoul's strategic plans and how does its vision align with Canada's? I mean, what synergy can we look forward to?
I wasn't surprised that Canada was among the first countries to welcome our Indo-Pacific strategy. The Indo-Pacific strategy has been the top agenda between our two governments throughout last year. So our in-depth discussion had begun even before the release of our Indo-Pacific strategies. As Canada's foreign minister said, our strategies are aligned, implying that there is so much work we could do together. And the most striking aspect is that Korea and Canada are the only countries that have a component of North Pacific in the strategies. I had a meeting with Canada's foreign minister this morning, and she told me that Korea will be a key partner for Canada in the North Pacific as well as in the Indo-Pacific. Korea and Canada have so much to offer each other, and we already see a new partnership on economic security on the horizon. Since Canada has critical minerals in abundance, Korean companies have made huge investments in Canada to manufacture electric vehicle batteries and their components. In artificial intelligence and other emerging technologies too, Korea and Canada are on track to develop ourselves into close partners.
Right, so many challenges and also projects to look forward. Now, speaking of projects, also included among items discussed by the leaders of South Korea and Canada back in September was revitalizing cultural exchanges. What are some of the nations? What are some of the ways that the two nations can work together, or even projects that they can collaborate on?
I like to imagine the Korea-Canada relationship is a car with 4 wheels. The front 2 wheels are the value-driven partnership and the economic partnership. But the car won't get us far without good rear wheels. And the rear wheels are people-to-people exchanges, cultural exchanges, and our shared histories. Today, and I'm so glad that they were identified as one of the shared priorities in our leaders' joint statement last September. Today, we launched the 60th anniversary of Korea-Canada diplomatic relations, and this special year will be followed by the Year of Cultural Exchange for 2024 and 2025. And as part of our joint efforts to promote cultural exchanges, Korea and Canada signed a MOU last November to create a fund that will assist research and collaborative projects by Korean and Canadian artists. And this year, our embassy and the Canadian embassy in Seoul will jointly host exchange projects such as the Korea-Canada landscape photography exhibition, performances and exhibitions by Korean and Canadian artists with disabilities, and collaboration performances by both countries' musicians. Of course, most Canadians are already quite familiar with K-culture, but for the next 3 years, they will have a chance to broaden and deepen their understanding of Korean culture.
Certainly. Thank you for your service over there in Canada, Mr. Ambassador Im. Thank you for your time this morning and evening for you.
Thank you.
The inflation pressure in the U.S. is showing signs of waning. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics on Thursday, consumer prices dropped for a 6th consecutive month in December for an annual increase of 6.5%, marking the lowest increase in 14 months. The figure is down from 7.1% in November. Now, the prices were down 0.1% from November to December for the first on-month drop since the early in the COVID-19 pandemic in May 2020. Pundits say declining prices of energy and food products, as well as stabilizing global supply, are behind the decline. All eyes are now on how the latest figures will affect the Federal Reserve's interest rate policy going forward. During the first rate-setting meeting of 2023 in the coming hour, the Bank of Korea is expected to deliver its 7th consecutive rate hike. Analysts say the central bank will deliver a conventional 25 basis point hike, raising key interest rates to 3.5%. That rate would mean there's still a significant gap to the U.S. Federal Reserve rates, which stand in the 4.25% to 4.5% range. Analysts also predict that the BOK would settle its key interest rates to 3.5%, despite the U.S. Fed being poised to raise its policy rate to as high as 5.1% this year. Less than a week ago, China reopened its borders for the first time in more than three years. Now, according to The Economist, China's reopening will be the biggest economic event of 2023. Our business correspondent Kim Hyun-sung has the outlook.
For 1,016 days, China's borders had been clamped shut in an effort to ward off COVID-19. But last Sunday, they finally reopened, bringing newfound optimism for the economy.
The opening up and the reopening of the Chinese economy is a strong positive lever for 2023.
This is Myeongdong, an area that used to be popular among Chinese tourists. Since the start of the pandemic, this once bustling district had for a while become almost a ghost town. But with overseas tourism returning, so has foot traffic here. And with Chinese borders reopening, this area holds the potential of once again returning to its heyday. With China only just reopening and with South Korea restricting arrivals from China due to concerns about COVID-19, the full buying power of Chinese tourists has not yet reached Korea's tourism sector. But locals wait, hopefully, for when it does.
It was really tough. For almost 3 years, I had to work in delivery and construction because I couldn't sail. I only came back in recent months to sail, and my wife and I are hopeful that this area will fully bounce back when Chinese tourists once again visit.
Already, businesses that had left Myeongdong are returning. The vacancy rate for local stores had climbed during South Korea's lockdowns, but it's starting to tick down in recent days, and industry experts expect it to go down even further once the Chinese tourists can travel without COVID restrictions. But not everyone shares an optimistic outlook. Some are concerned that China's reopening could push up commodity prices even further.
As China eliminates its zero COVID policy, their production will increase, and that will help reduce inflation. But there's a contrary point of view. In the short run, it may even increase inflation because China's demand for oil and commodities may rise before their production.
Goldman Sachs has projected that oil prices would climb by about $15 per barrel as China regains its appetite for oil imports. China's lockdown was a never-before-seen experiment, so experts vary in their projections on how this new reopening will swing the global economy. But there's one view they all share. China's reopening is likely to make a big splash. Kim Hyun-sung, Arirang News.
Now, on the local front, South Korea is ramping up electricity generation from nuclear power plants. By the end of the decade, it's expected to account for more than 1/3 of the power mix here in Korea. Our Ji-young reports.
Nuclear plants and renewable energy could each account for more than 1/3 of total power generation in South Korea by 2036. On Thursday, the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy announced its 10th basic plan for long-term electricity supply and demand, which includes reforms to the country's electricity mix with the aim of achieving greater reductions of emissions. Under President Yoon Suk-yeol's pledge to make South Korea a nuclear reactor superpower, the aim is to raise the proportion of nuclear power to almost 35% of the country's total production capacity by 2036. In 2018, nuclear power accounted for about 23%. A third of capacity is also to come from renewable sources, a sharp increase from the 6% recorded in 2018. Hydrogen and ammonia will account for more than 7%. In the nearer term, the goal by 2030 is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from 2018 levels by 40%. By 2030, nuclear is expected to rise to more than 32% of the total. The ministry said to achieve the plan, construction at the Shinhanul nuclear power plant on reactors 3 and 4, having been stalled by political disagreements, is to be resumed in 2024. The plan also aims to increase renewable energy to more than 20% and the proportion of coal to be reduced to under 20%. The renewable energy mix currently concentrated on solar panels will expand more into wind power. 엄지영, Arirang News.
For a look at the news from around the world, we now turn to our Matthew Ashley joining us here in the studio. Good morning, Matthew.
Good morning, Dami.
Let's start in the U.S. as a special counsel has been appointed to look into President Joe Biden's alleged retention of classified documents.
Well, that's right, Dami. On Thursday, former federal prosecutor Robert Hur was appointed by Attorney General Merrick Garland to look into whether the secret documents were removed and retained without authorization. Now, the appointment came moments after the White House announced that another batch of secret papers were discovered at the U.S. leader's private residence in Delaware in December last year. It follows Monday's announcement that 10 classified documents were found at a private office in Washington in November, which was formerly used by Biden. In both cases, the White House says the president has cooperated with the National Archives and Department of Justice. Now, according to the White House, the documents were, quote, inadvertently misplaced. The documents discovered relate to Biden's time as vice president during the Obama administration. Now, the United Arab Emirates is hosting this year's COP28 climate summit and has announced that the president of the summit will be the head of an oil company. Now, Sultan Ahmed Al Jaber is CEO of the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company, one of the world's largest oil producers. The UAE announced on Thursday that he will serve as president at the United Nations Climate Change Conference in Dubai from November 30th to December 12th. The event will see 190 countries discuss how best to limit rising global temperatures to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. Al Jaber is also chairman of a state-owned renewable energy firm, but climate activists have argued that his appointment as COP28 president could represent a conflict of interest that undermines the summit's climate goals. Meanwhile, in Europe, Sweden has discovered the continent's largest deposit of rare earth metals. The discovery of over 1 million tons of rare earth oxides was made in Kiruna, in the far north of Sweden. State-owned mining company LKAB announced the news on Thursday, local time. Rare earths refers to 17 different elements used in items like mobile phones, electric vehicles, and even missiles. Currently, no rare earths are mined in Europe. The discovery could see a reduced reliance on China, which supplied 98% of rare earths used by the EU in 2021. And finally, scientists have released footage of hundreds of thousands of South American river turtles hatching in what is known as the world's largest single gathering of turtles. Now, taken by Ecovale, a partner of the Wildlife Conservation Society, the video shows turtles emerge from their shells and crawl to a nearby river. The event takes place every year along the Guapore Itenes River, which is situated on the border between Brazil and Bolivia. Some 80,000 female turtles lay their eggs on the river's sandy beaches in late September. The eggs hatch between mid-December and early January.
Good morning. It feels like much of Korea is going through all 4 seasons this week, and right now, monsoon-like levels of rain are falling on Jeju and the south coast and will continue to pound down through this afternoon. And those areas are also waking up to morning temperatures that are above 15 degrees Celsius and Jeju at 20 degrees. So heavy rain alerts have been issued there with more than 100 millimeters of showers in the forecast. The rest of the country could see 5 to 40 millimeters before more rain clouds form tomorrow. Then a massive amount of snow is in the forecast for the east of Gangwon-do province, with more than 20 centimeters of snow in the forecast continuing into Monday. Afternoon highs will be slightly lower than yesterday, but still way warmer than norms, topping out at 10 degrees here in the capital. Temperatures will fall to what we would normally have around this time of the year next week. With that in mind, here's a look at the weather conditions around the globe.
That wraps up today's New Day at Arirang. We'll be back next Monday at the same time. Happy Friday!